And God has come to take the bottom rail and bring it to the top and make the last the first and the least the most.
The Farrakhan generation. The Farrakhan generation.
Why's it? Closing the gap. As long as we moving together, then nothing is holding us back. I cannot factor in none of your feelings. We dealing in actual facts. Just know our numbers exact. Keep it 1,000. If you see the universe stitching his crown, you won't see a cap. Told you we closing the gap. They covered the truth, he opened the lid. I'm going over they throw like a bridge. You tell a tree by its fruit like a fig. Went from auction blocks to doing the bid. We were chosen so that I get it big. The well is the darkest, as cold as it gets. Truth is the light, and our path will be lit by the love of the leader. No doubts in this wig. Cured out with illness, I know that they sick. Ooh.
Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, the Farrakhan generation.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the all-wise, true and living God, who came to us in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, we thank him for coming out of the east unto the west and raising that one from amongst the lost, chosen people of God. That one that I am speaking of is indeed the exalted, living Christ, the great, most honorable Elijah Muhammad. We thank both the Mahdi, that self-guided one, the supreme being, the Christ, the crusher of the wicked, for extending themselves, their mind, mission, will, love, and favor into that third beautiful black man, the Messiah in our midst, amongst us, the most honorable Minister Louis Eugene Farrakhan. And in their holy and righteous names, we greet you from around the country and from even around the world with the greeting words of peace and of paradise of us. Assalamu alaikum. I am your brother and forever servant, Brother Michael Jamal Hassan Muhammad. And I still miss my sister Maryam Alima Warith Muhammad, as I would be passing it on to her. But I'm still patiently waiting for hopefully her return in the future. But we thank you again for tuning into this week's very special interview again, or not really an interview, a presentation from our dear brother Roger A. Muhammad, coming all the way out from Montreal, Canada, again on the exclusive one and only Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, the Farrakhan generation. And as you can see him glowing as he does every month for us, I would like to stop myself because this time we are starting at 7, and I want to make sure that there is not much from me to say and that all of the time of light is on our dear brother Roger A. Muhammad. So I am done. The broadcast is going over to him, and he will further explain where we are going in this beautiful journey of his subject. Love you. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother Roger A. Muhammad.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, brother Michael.
Yes, sir.
And taking that light, putting it right back toward Allah, Elijah Farrakhan.
Praise be to Allah. You got it, dear brother. I love you, sir.
All praises due to Allah. Thank you so much, sir. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, who came to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom praises are due forever. And we thank Allah for raising up from among us a divine leader, teacher, and guide, whom we boldly claim is, in fact, the Mahdi and the exalted Christ that the world has been waiting for. And my Christian brothers and sisters, don't tune off when we say that, because we want you to give us the chance to explain that, what that means, and the oneness with Christ. And in that oneness with Christ, that Christ level of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad from Master Fard Muhammad, an extension came in the person of the one we have in our midst today. Really and truly, grace, living grace in our midst in the world that is now, as we can see, coming down into the bottom of hell. But he's that hand that's pulling us out, that's reaching out to take us out and up into that heavenly state of mind that we may establish a universal government of peace in which we all can live together in peace. And I'm speaking of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in their names, I would like to greet you in the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. And I want to thank the Closing the Gap broadcast network, the supreme media coming up in the new world, with Brother Student Minister James and the team, and Brother Michael and Brother Romel and Sister Miriam, doing such an amazing work. So it is an honor and a blessing to be here tonight. And we want to thank all of you who are on tonight. And I personally want to thank my brothers and sisters from the Muhammad Study Group of Montreal, where I am from, and I am blessed to serve as a student coordinator. And so let's get into it. So this is a monthly special presentation where we present research, analysis, information on the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, mostly from a scientific perspective. We know that there are many ideas floating around in the world about who is God, who is man, who is the devil, where do we come from, where are we going, and who is the original man, who is the original woman. And what the world does not know in this age of information, where there is so much information, so much data, so many points of reference, from social media to YouTube to TikTok to Google to now ChatGPT, so many sources of information, so many teachers and self-proclaimed teachers, so many pastors, imams, and so on. It can be difficult to discern and to have a criteria. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to us, is that criteria. And in that criterion, we are taught in our lessons as Muslims that Islam is mathematics and mathematics is Islam, and that it can be proven with no limit of time. And in the illustrious book, Closing the Gap, Minister Jabril Muhammad quotes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as saying that it is not what we say with our mouths that the people should lay hold to, but it is what we can prove that the people should lay hold to. And so in the last two presentations, and I'm just kind of setting the base for what we're going to discuss tonight, because it is a continuation of the previous two presentations. And if you did not get a chance to listen to them, we highly encourage you to go back and watch them, for it actually progressively leads up to this current edition. But in the last two, we established that, well, even though there were some recent scientific challenges to the notion of the original ancient Egyptians being actually Black people using a false interpretation of genetics, we came with the actual facts to demonstrate that no, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the ancient Egyptians and the pyramid builders were in fact Black people, he was and is right and exact. And that laid a certain foundation. And from there, we went a step further last month and we took on the idea of who is the original ape man of Darwinism, where Darwinism or neo-Darwinism attempts to portray the history of original man, original black man and woman as the history of the apes. As we coming from the planet of the apes, the only reason why we are the original people, according to that so-called theory, is because we apparently are just the first one up from apes. So because of that, many white people are willing to say, yes, you are the original people because, well, you evolved from apes as the first ones that were initially monkeys, and whites are the more evolved, recent iteration of humanity. And of course, with actual facts and the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, we went to battle with that one. And we debunked it using the teachings supported by genetics, supported by science. And now that we've established that, no, we are not the original ape man, we are the original man, and the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. We want to now establish what exactly made us God of the universe and why we are destined to become once again God of the universe. So, well, brother, that's a kind of a bold claim. Well, we intend to go into it. And how we are going to do that is really by going into what we could call the history of the real Wakanda. Now, what is Wakanda? For those of you who are not Marvel Comics nerds, as I am, admittedly, you know, none of us are perfect. I'm still striving. I'm still striving. Don't judge me for watching Marvel movies, okay? All right. But if you've watched, as many black people have watched, the movie Black Panther, in that movie, which is based on Stan Lee's comic books, where Black Panther or T'Challa, King T'Challa, originates from this hidden away black kingdom in Africa. And it's a kingdom that is actually very advanced with super advanced technology, more advanced than anything that we have ever seen in modern society, and baffles the minds of all the scientists of this world. Now, that is presented as a comic book fantasy. This is presented as some sort of mythology, because we know, of course, I'm being a little sarcastic, coming into the voice of white folk, but we know, of course, that you Negroes, I'm sorry, you black people, you've never built any advanced civilizations. You don't have any advanced technology. Well, what if we told you from the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad coming through the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? What if we told you that in fact the Marvel Comics version of Wakanda is but a caricature and a sign of the real Wakanda, which is the history of the Aboriginal black men and women of the planet at a time so remote in history that it really predates prehistory. For as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, there is no prehistory for the black man. So in doing this exegesis, we want to revisit words from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who said, as we have quoted on the first presentation, that if you want a sign of when the black man and woman was God on the planet, go to Egypt. For those who remember the first presentation, we lifted that quote. Initially, when we lifted the quote, we lifted it in establishing that the ancient Egyptians were black. But tonight we want to lift the quote from a different perspective. We want to ask, what makes ancient Egypt a sign of when we were God on the planet? What exactly is it? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad does not speak idle words. So why did he specifically point out ancient Egypt? Well, the Bible actually also speaks of ancient Egypt as a sign, actually pointing to the pyramids. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 19, verse 19 and 20, it says, quote, "In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord at its border. And it will be for a sign and for a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they will cry to the Lord because of the oppressors, and he will send them a savior and a mighty one, and he will deliver them." Notice how there's actually two mentions. There's a mention of a savior and a mighty one. We're not going to get too deep into the spiritual meaning of that specific passage. We're going to save that for the next presentations. But we do want to point out that, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did, the Bible talks about the pyramids, as many biblical scholars say, as a sign. Well, what is hidden in the science of the pyramids? Mr. Muhammad, what is it? What is the sign that Elijah Muhammad wants us to investigate, to analyze? Well, if you look at the pyramids, they're actually the greatest engineering wonder of this present world. No scientist is able to explain how those giant pyramids were built, or the science and technology and mathematics behind them. They have 2.5 million stones, and not just any stones, stones between 2.5 and 80 tons each. That is a spectacular weight. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine what 80 ton looks like, but you will have a hard time even today finding boats who can carry 80-ton stones. And the pyramid, all of it, actually weighs 6 million tons. 6 million tons. Now, if you're a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you had to study what is called the actual facts. And in the actual facts, we are taught the weight of the planet, which is 6 sectillion tons. So the 6 million tons could actually be a sign of the 6 sectillion tons of the planet. So our ancestors left a sign of their ownership of the planet, because the Sphinx, who is the symbol of the great black ruler, is the one that points at the pyramids, and the pyramids point to the universe that belongs to you. Now, what else is so amazing about these pyramids, Mr. Muhammad? Well, did you know that if you look at the longitude of the pyramid, the longitude coordinate of the pyramid is 29.97922458 degrees north. Now, that long decimal point expression has something particular because it matches exactly. You see, in our lessons, we're taught that the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. But when you convert it into the metric system in kilometers, it is actually 300,000 kilometers per second. And so when you convert that into its exact decimal position, it is exactly the longitude coordinate of the Great Pyramid, meaning that our ancestors actually aligned the pyramid to correspond with the speed of light. And we know that the speed of light in the space-time continuum is what actually shapes reality and time itself and space itself. And so that is another sign left by our ancestors. What else did you leave us, great original people, according to Mr. Muhammad, who said that it is a sign? Well, if you study the alignment of the Great Pyramids, you'll actually find that there is a stellar alignment. And Mother Tainetta Muhammad speaks much on this alignment. And inshallah, in the next presentations, we will circle back with what Mother Tainetta Muhammad explained regarding that. But the alignment of the pyramids and the Sphinx corresponds to the configuration of Orion's belt, but not at any point in time. It corresponds to the alignment with the configuration of Orion's belt exactly 12,500 years ago. Now, note that Western scientists only arrived at a precise measurement of the planet similar to those of the pyramids during the launch of their satellites in the 1970s. But our ancestors knew this apparently without satellites. Well, that's what they say. But what is really interesting about this date of 12,500 years ago is that interestingly enough, it corresponds with a 15,000 year calendar, which we're going to get into a little bit further. There's a reason why that sign was left almost 15,000 years ago. And we will get into that from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as to why this is a sign of when the black man and woman was God. And as a sign, it is not where we stop. And I say this to my beautiful, beautiful, wonderful brothers who follow the Kemet ways. We love you. We're with you. We love Kemet. We're with you on Kemet. But what we would like to tell you tonight from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, it is that Kemet is not the beginning of Black civilization. It is the end of Black civilization. It is a sign that we left. It is not the beginning. It is a sign of something much more powerful and much greater than what we could imagine. And all of it is our birthright. Now, what else can we say? Well, I could not speak of these facts without shouting out my brother and one of my mentors, Dr. Ridgely Abdul Mumin Muhammad, our very own student minister of agriculture, because in his two books, you see, the white scholars and scientists have actually analyzed these measurements, and they have been bearing witness to these measurements. And there's a book written by Robert Boval, who looks into this particular alignment and the fact that the Sphinx is older, much older than what the Egyptologists are willing to tell us. But this fact was printed and presented to us by one of the students of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Dr. Ridgely Abdul Mumin Muhammad wrote this way before Robert Bauval ever had the thought in his mind, giving us a sign of the power of this teaching to confound even the greatest scholars of this world. You'll have to forgive me. I'm a little excited. Whenever I get into these subjects, I get a little hyped up, you know? So I hope you forgive me. I hope you forgive me. But you cannot help but to get excited when you get into this teaching. But now back to the signs of the pyramids. You see, the pyramids are doing things that really confound the scholars of this world, especially those who want to try to convince us that humanity started 200,000 years ago around the end of the Paleolithic age, and that we were just these primitives in ancient Egypt with very primitive knowledge of not even astronomy, but astrology, and that we had no advanced technology. Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches the opposite, and we have the proof for it. Because another sign in the Great Pyramids is the exact calculation of what is called the true astronomical north, not the magnetic north, which is variable, but the astronomical north. And so in that Great Pyramid, the precision is absolutely correct in all four directions: east, south, west, and north, with incredible mathematical precision. And the pyramid's northern side, in true north, is really exact. Imagine this. We're talking about a monument that weighs 6 million tons, where the architects set it in exact measurement to 3 to the 60th of precision to the true north. Now, you might not necessarily be an engineer or an architect or an astronomer or an astrophysicist, but I guarantee you that if you take these actual facts to them, it absolutely blows their mind. But that's just the beginning. Because when you look closely at those measurements, and why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that it was a sign, because really, as Mother Tainetta Muhammad writes in many of her articles, it is a sign for us in the wilderness of North America, that we need to pay attention to. So hopefully tonight, we're going to give you a few indications that will get you interested in learning and knowing all about yourself and accepting your own. But when you look at the base measurements, if you now look at the Great Pyramid, as we said, it is exactly precise to true north. And it is in the close latitude, what they call 30, which is 1/3 of the way between the latitude of North Pole and the equator. You say, well, Brother Roger, you know, you've been getting very, very technical here, brother, but please bear with me. Because again, Islam is mathematics, and we're going to try to make it as simple and as sweet as possible. But we need, as Black people, to go back to science. We can't now allow our open enemy to be able to develop high technologies, and we are not the supreme engineers of the new world. We have to get interested in science and technology and physics and engineering. In fact, in the Supreme Wisdom lessons in the University of Al-Azhar, 2 of the 3 academic programs that are talked about are actually about engineering. That's just a hint to the wise. But back to our pyramid measurements. You see, this is something that's baffling white scholars. Because if you measure the base perimeter of the pyramid, so you see that base right here, that base, if you measure that base in absolute metric numbers, you will find that if you scale it, I'll explain what we mean by scaling, but if you scale it at a number of 1 to 43,200, you get the exact equatorial circumference of the planet. Now that's crazy. But you say, well, what's with that number 43,200, Brother Roger? I'll get to it. But now if you measure the heights and also scale it at 1 to 43,200, you now get the polar radius of the Earth, which means that the measurements of the pyramid are actually scaling the whole planet. You could fit, if you scale the planet Earth, you could fit it inside the pyramid and it would fit perfectly. Can you imagine that? Or if you put it differently, if you scaled up the pyramids to the size of the planet, you could take the ball of the planet and it would fit exactly inside the pyramid. What were our ancestors trying to tell us when we know in our lessons? I'm speaking to students of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. When we're asked to measure the Earth, to measure the circumference of the planet, 196,940,000 square miles, to measure the diameter. Why did Master Farad Muhammad give us these actual facts? And now by coincidence, we find those actual facts embedded and coded inside the pyramid. Ooh, there's wisdom in that. But now, because there is a wobble in the earth, you remember, students of the minister, fellow believers, and fellow supporters, if you go back and listen to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he talks about the wobble, the imperfection in the earth, that there's a wobble in the earth. Well, it turns out that our ancestors, in setting the latitude at 30 and in taking their measurements and scaling them, they took into account that actual wobble that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is talking about. It's actually coded in the measurements and is not a random number. But if you scale it on that 43,200 number, it is defined by a key motion of the earth called the precession of the equinox, which occurs every 25,000 years. Now, if you're a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I keep repeating that, because if you're not a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I say, go and become one, because you will learn facts that will actually blow your mind, but also make you into the God that your ancestors wanted you to become. But now, what that means, brothers and sisters, is that this measurement that is scaled at 43,200, as I will explain in a moment, is actually deliberate because it maps to this cycle of the 25,000 years that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this is when the original man renews his history. And now let's quote the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on, for those of you who say, Brother Roger, you getting too technical, you getting too astrophysical for me. Oh, well, I'm just following our teacher and our teacher's teacher. Because on page 108, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, if you've read Message to the Black Man, he talks about exactly this. He says, quote, the change made in our planet's rotation at the poles, because this is what this wobble and this true north position is actually about the poles. It's the rotation of the poles. But when you read those scientific explanations and you read back page 108 of Message to the Black Man, it takes on a whole new meaning. He says, The change made in our planet's rotation at the poles is about 1 minute a year and takes 25,000 years to bring about a complete change in the region of the poles. This is the precession of the equinox. The messenger didn't use all this fancy terminology, but that's exactly what he's referring to, the precession of the equinox. The actual poles, the messenger says, the actual poles are inclined 23.2 degrees to the plane of its orbit. The original Black nation used 23 scientists to write the future of that nation for the next 25,000 years, and the 24th is the judge, or the one God, Allah. Allah taught me that once upon a time, they made history to last 35,000 years. Let me stop here and say this. And then he continues. And actually, when it comes to that 35,000 year cycle, there's a reason for that, which is connected to the moon. And this connects to our ancient technology and power. And at the end, inshallah, we're going to talk about the moon. Yes, brothers and sisters, I'm taking you to the sun, moon, and stars with the help of Allah. You know, I'm just playing a little bit. Gotta make light of it. But now, going back to the sign of the pyramid that the sign of ancient Egypt that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about in the measurement of the pyramid, where we could fit the earth in the pyramid if you scale it at 1 to 43,200. Well, that is actually a deliberate choice, because that precession is that wobble that we talked about. See the wobble, how the North Pole actually rotates, which means that every 25,000 years, as it rotates, it's not exactly facing the same constellation. So earlier on, when we said that it was positioned to Orion, that is really based on the exact position to Orion, which is connected to something that Mother Tainetta talked about. And I'm just laying the base for when we talk about it in the next month or so, inshallah. But now in that measurement, what we need to understand is that this precession motion operates at 1 degree every 72 years, and a rotation at poles is about 1 minute a year. But why that is relevant is because 72 happens to be a multiple of 43,200, which corresponds to the scaling found in the pyramid. So our ancestors understood the science to such a high degree. And remember, Master Farad Muhammad, I think I read somebody say it in the chat, said that the basis of his was what? Somebody put it in the chat, astronomy. And so we find signs of that indeed. But now that multiple of 43,200, which is 72, and that 72, which matches that precession of the equinox, that 25,000 year cycles, which brings about the complete change. Maybe it's a sign of something. And it made me think about something. And I had a hunch. And I spoke to one of my brothers. I have to say, we have some great believers in Montreal. Brilliant believers. I mean, you know, I have like a whole research team of believers in the study group. And when you look at 72, what is it about 72? Can we connect this now with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? Well, let's remember these words from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who said, you remember those words, right? This is one of the strongest national preachers that I have in the bounds of North America. And he says, everywhere you hear him, listen to him. Everywhere you see him, look at him. Everywhere he advises you to go, go. Everywhere he advises you to stay from, stay from. For we are thankful to Allah for this great helper of mine, Minister Farrakhan. Now, it's interesting when we looked at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying that we should look to Egypt for signs. But now in the pyramids is this great sign of 72, which matches the changing of the cycles. And when did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say this about his great student? It was in the Theology of Time. Thank you, Brother Abdul Sabir, for that reference. In the Theology of Time, lecture part 9, in 1972. Hint to the wise. I'll let you, let it marinate a little bit as you think on it. But now let's go back, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad actually in the Theology of Time had much to say about the technology of the pyramids and how it was a sign of our great advanced civilizations. He said, quote, "The Savior, Master Farad Muhammad, taught me that the pyramids were built with hydraulics that they don't have in use now and will not be put into use because of the enemy. They do not want the enemy to grasp that knowledge. He doesn't know it yet. He has been asking the question of how the pyramids were built. Allah said to me that they would put that same hydraulic in effect as soon as they remove the enemy." Now, what is interesting is that now we find that scientists have been trying to creep up into that technology. And Allah, while He is not allowing them to get the full access, He's giving them inches. You know, like in the Quran, it speaks of the jinn and how He allows them to get a little, listen and get a little peep into the heavens. He's allowing them to grow into the knowledge. And what we find is that those scientists are bearing witness to the hydraulic system that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaks of. And so now I want to take a moment and I want to play this video. It's about 11 minutes. And by the way, Brother Michael, it does look like I'm going to go probably 8:30. I'll try to go 8:15. Because Brother Michael and I've been saying to him, I'm trying to put it in an hour, but it's a challenge. But I'll try to do it in an hour and 15 minutes. So let me play this, because this is actually pointing to the hydraulic system that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching us about. And I want to bring it to our attention because I want us to bear witness to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said and the science behind it. Let's take a listen.
The Secrets Hidden in the Pyramids of Egypt. Part 1. The idea that civilizations progress from a primitive state to a more advanced one is a fallacy that evolutionists try to apply to history. If one abandons evolutionist nonsense and prejudice and looks at the historical references and findings with an unbiased mind, what one encounters is civilizations that used highly advanced technologies. Remains left from ancient Egypt, the Mayans, and the Sumerians indicate the branches of science such as electricity, electrochemistry, electromagnetics, metallurgy, hydrogeology, medicine, chemistry, and physics were used to a considerable extent. Electricity was efficiently generated and widely utilized in ancient Egypt. The Baghdad battery and the first arc lights were used at that time, but was electrical generation limited to these in ancient Egypt? A careful examination of Egyptian history immediately reveals the sophistication in perfect illumination. No soot has been found in the corridors of the pyramids or the tombs of the kings, because these areas were lit using electricity. Relief carvings show that the Egyptians used handheld torches powered by cable-free power sources. The arc lamp used in the lighthouse of Alexandria is further proof that electricity was used in ancient Egypt. The energy required to power the lighthouse of Alexandria for 24 hours a day could only have been supplied by a regular electrical source. The pyramids of Egypt were giant power plants generating electricity. 1. The outer casing of the Great Pyramid was covered with white tufa limestone, so tightly built that not even a razor blade could fit between the blocks. The white tufa limestone does not contain magnesium and has high insulating properties. This insulation property prevented the electricity inside the pyramid from being released without control. 2. The stone blocks used inside the pyramid were made of another form of limestone, containing crystal and a small amount of metal, which allowed for maximum power transmission. The shafts inside the pyramid were lined with granite. Granite is a slightly radioactive substance, and permits the ionization of the air inside these shafts. When we look at an insulated electric cable, we see that conductive and insulation materials are used in the same way as in the pyramids. 3. The conductive and insulating properties of the pyramid are an example of flawless engineering. However, a source of energy is needed for electricity generation. The Giza Plateau where the pyramids stand is full of underground water channels. The pyramids rise above the limestone layers, the spaces between them being full of water. These special layers of rock that transmit electricity upward as they carry underground water to the surface are known as aquifers. The high volume flow of the River Nile that passes through these aquifers produces an electric current. This is known as physioelectricity. The pyramids' underground chambers are granite conductors built within the rock charged with physioelectricity. This electric current is conducted directly to the upper part of the pyramid's granite, covered subterranean chambers. Granite is a very good conductor of electricity. The electromagnetic field that forms at the bottom of the pyramid is transmitted in concentrated form to the upper layers of the pyramid. On the top of the pyramid, there was a gold capstone, gold being an excellent conductor of electricity. This section is no longer there in our day. This means the top of the pyramid has lost its structure of flawless geometry. This gold capstone facilitated a conductive path for the transfer of negative ions to the ionosphere. This way, a current was generated. How does it serve to move the electromagnetic field on the ground with the help of an aquifer? An identical form of this technology, employed in Egypt 5,000 years ago, was used by Nikola Tesla, an inventor of electric technology in the early 1900s, in a tower he constructed in the United States of America. Tesla, the inventor of such fundamental electric technology as the alternating current, electric engine, radio, the laser, and radar, was successful in simultaneously transmitting sound and pictures between continents in the Wardenclyffe Tower he built between 1901 and 1917. He used an external source of electricity for this, and even applied wireless power transmission technology. Tesla had also built his tower above an aquifer and discharged the negative ions from the aquifer to the tower. The electromagnetic technology used in Tesla's famous tower is identical to the electromagnetic field set up in the construction of the pyramids. Both systems generate negative ions and transmit them without the need for electric cables. So for what purpose did the Egyptians use electricity? Relief carvings clearly show that the Egyptians used handheld bulb-type lamps powered by a cable-free electric source. These bulbs are reminiscent of Nikola Tesla's descriptions to show that his alternating current was safe. At the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, Tesla transmitted alternating electric current through his body to light a bulb he held in his hand without using electric cables. This relief carving shows a wireless antenna. The Egyptians used the antenna and cable-free energy for wireless communication. In the relief on the left is a carved transmitter with a receiver on the left. This evidence indicates that the Egyptians used free wireless energy for communication purposes. This relief carving shows a yarn manufacturing facility. The yarn Egyptians used for their fabrics at that time were as fine as those manufactured by machinery today. The Egyptians also used electric power in their weaving plants. It was seen that many gold objects which have remained from ancient Egypt were in fact very finely gold-plated. Such perfect gold plating as in these pieces requires the use of electricity. The total electromagnetic measurement made around the Great Pyramid is identical to that made during a thunderstorm with lightning. There's a powerful electromagnetic field around the Great Pyramid. This may be observed through a simple experiment when standing at the top of the pyramid with a bottle wrapped in a damp cloth. Sparks fly away from the bottle as if one were on top of a high-voltage bobbin. The pyramids were not used as tombs. The pyramids have always been interpreted as the tombs of the pharaohs, but in fact no inscriptions of any kind appear in the corridors of the Great Pyramid. This suggests a functional building rather than a mausoleum. An empty stone chest was found on the central axis of the pyramid that archaeologists call the King's Chamber. They claimed that this contained the coffin of the pharaoh, but that since this had been stolen, it was now empty. But the examination of the dimensions of the stone chest and the special location in which it was installed reveals a different state of affairs. That point is just where the missing part of the pyramid's conductive structure and whole design suggest it should be. If a superconductive material was installed here, the pyramid could manufacture enough electricity for all of Egypt. This superconductor is thought to have been the Ark of the Covenant, which was known to have been in Egypt in ancient times, and whose dimensions are just right to fit inside the stone chest. The prophet Moses, peace be upon him, was adopted by Pharaoh, and according to historic records, was raised as an administrator because of his superior moral values, intelligence, and abilities. One of the phases in leadership training in ancient Egypt was the teaching of all the secrets of Egypt and the knowledge of energy. In addition to its other properties, there are also various references to the Ark of the Covenant serving as a capacitor, and that this was the source of Egypt's energy. The prophet Moses, peace be upon him, is known to have taken the Ark of the Covenant with him when he fled Egypt. According to historic references, one of the reasons why Pharaoh chased the prophet Moses, peace be upon him, right up to the last moment, and strove to catch him at whatever price, was the Ark of the Covenant, because Pharaoh was aware that all the glory and magnificence of Egypt would be lost without electricity. Historic references also show that Egyptian civilization reached its peak during the reign of Ramses II, who lived at the same time as the prophet Moses, peace be upon him. But those civilizations collapsed in less than 10 years after Ramses II, and Giza was even abandoned. The city, once the center of civilization, remained deserted until the next dynasty settled there. Were the Egyptians the only society to utilize wireless electrical technology? The relief carvings left by the Mayan and Assyrians also contain images of similar techniques to those implied in the pyramids. All this information once again goes to demonstrate that there were no primitive people and societies in the past, as evolutionists would have us believe. In terms of civilization, more or less developed communities have lived side by side at all times throughout history. A society that existed thousands of years ago enjoyed a far more advanced technology compared to one living in the 20th century. And this shows us that development is not part of an evolutionary process. In other words, that there is no linear advancement from a primitive level of civilization to a more developed one in history.
All right, all right. Now I hope you got to pay attention. Now I know that the video was a little bit long, but that needed to be laid out to show us that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us is actually right and exact. Now, think of that. Think of the kind of technology that was at play, and they're not even understanding it yet. They don't even understand it yet, but that is the beginning of trying to get a hint at what this is to show us. Because if, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that this technology would not come until the enemy of God is removed, if now they're starting to get signs of it, it could be a sign that it is really the time of the people of God to come forward and a new world to come about. And in fact, when we study even further the high science and technology, engineers are continuously baffled the more they dig into it. There's a book by an engineer called Christopher Dunn. And Christopher Dunn published actually a scientific paper that was peer-reviewed in a journal of engineering. And he wrote this book called The Giza Power Plant Technologies of Ancient Egypt. And in it, he actually shows the technological and mathematical impossibility that these ancient Egyptians could have used these crude, rudimentary little, saws to chisel through that incredibly hard stone. And recently, researchers have found a block, a stone, what they call a throwaway stone from the ancient pyramids. And if you notice, there's this chisel there. But if you look closely at it, researchers have examined this cut. And when you look at it, and they try to actually take the saws of what they say were the saws used at the time to try to cut through it. And if you tried to cut through that stone with those ancient tools, it would take you to get through 1 millimeter. It would take you a whole, actually to try to get through not even a centimeter would take you 6 hours. 6 hours with those old tools. So what the now new findings are revealing was that the only thing that could produce that cut, you might not be able to see it right, but it's so precise and so sharp. You see, if you're cutting with a laser, the only types of saws that can produce a cut like that are laser saws. Basically, a laser cut. And Christopher Dunn is saying that the only logical engineering explanation was that they had to use something like ultrasound to actually chisel through this. So you see how all of a sudden the history of our ancestors is beginning to sound more and more like Wakanda, but it is the real Wakanda. And it doesn't stop there, because in the Journal of Applied Physics, volume 124, issue 3, by Belazine and colleagues, they actually published a study based on experiments that they ran. And guess what they found? Notice how in the video they were talking about the principles of electromagnetism as a source of potential energy, and how Tesla saw this as a source of infinite energy, which, by the way, Tesla is responsible for 80% of all the technology that the white man produces today. Not just the Tesla car that Elon Musk did. 80% of the technology that you and I are using from the white man's world today comes from a lot of the findings of Mr. Tesla. And as it turns out, Mr. Tesla was obsessed with the pyramids. And as my brother, another brother from my city, Brother Philip X, put me on to a lot of the research on Mr. Tesla and some of the findings that he discovered, and how he was obsessed with the ancient pyramids, and much of the inspiration for the electromagnetic discoveries that he made that are now allowing your Tesla car to run on these batteries comes from ancient Egypt. And these physicists discovered in a paper, they published a study that reveals that the Great Pyramid of Giza can actually focus electromagnetic energy. And this is actually something very, very powerful because it has a great number of implications. So they found that the pyramid can focus electromagnetic energy within the internal chambers beneath its base. And the resonances induced by radio waves have lengths of 200 to 600 meters, which by technical terms is something that absolutely unbelievable for supposed primitive people. And what is called the extinction cross section determines energy absorption or scattering from incident waves, and this produces a multipole analysis which predicts and explains the distribution of scattered fields in the system. Now, some of you saying, Brother Roger, everything you said, it was like wah, 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 right? No, I know. But here's the real takeaway from this. And we want to use these terms, challenge us a little bit, because you can go back and re-listen to this and do your own research. Why? Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that Islam is mathematics, and we cannot be afraid of advanced science, technology, physics, and chemistry and engineering. That is what will help us to build a new world. This is the science of our ancestors that we're dealing with. But here's what these physicists have discovered. Based on these little findings that they were able to try to understand parts of the electromagnetic energy that could be channeled by the pyramid. Based on that information alone, you know, when they talk about we gave them one book of mathematics out of the 60,000. Well, now those physicists are talking about being able to build nanoparticle sensors, that they're able to make a design of pyramidal nanoparticles for advanced sensors based on the technology of our ancestors. They are thinking about building highly efficient solar cells, potential applications in solar energy generation based on the technology of our ancestors that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, study ancient Egypt to see a sign of when the black man and woman was God on the planet. These physicists found that they're able to make scientific advancements that enables control of light at nanoscales for various research purposes. And lastly, this finding offers promising solutions for nanotechnology and renewable energy. You see how the devil always talks about, you know, they're polluting the planet. They have this dirty energy problem. Our ancestors didn't have that in the real Wakanda. That's why when we left these monuments, we left them, it was clean. We didn't dirty up the planet with our monuments and wonders and technologies, because we were in sync with nature. And so our technology always respected nature. But because some white people think that the only way you can achieve high technology is through iron, well, you're completely off. Because if you heard Dr. Wesley's lecture a few weeks ago, his amazing lecture. Well, here's a little compliment to what he exposed. You see, this ancient technology of our ancestors is actually connected to those wheels that you see out in the sky. Not because we gained the technology from aliens on those wheels who came down, as some authors like Robert Bauval have been trying to say, that, before they admit that the black man built the pyramids, they want to say the aliens did it. They want to say that aliens came from Orion to try to teach us this technology. No, this technology that is common to the pyramids and the so-called UFOs and UAPs that they're finding today is because it comes from the one and the same people that harnessed high levels of science regarding the use of electromagnetic energy. Now, this is a report written in 1979 by the NASA as they were analyzing how flying saucers work. And when you read that report, you'll find that it matches the research that physicists are now discovering about the electromagnetic properties of the pyramids. Let's read on. It says the high speed, right angle turns, abrupt stops and acceleration of UFOs, and the absence of sonic booms, despite calculated speeds of 22,000 miles per hour or more. By the way, the sonic boom is when you hit the speed of sound. That crossing of the speed of sound, when you have a propulsor that is made from fuel, it essentially creates this sonic boom. But they're saying that our ancestors, really what they think are aliens, were able to evade that. He says, suggests that UFOs may generate an artificial gravitational field or otherwise use properties of space-time which we are not familiar with. UFO propulsion systems appear to involve electromagnetic and hydromagnetic. What is hydromagnetic? That's water. And in the hydraulic systems that connect with electromagnetism in the pyramids, those are what you could call hydro pumps, which is what is used by the wheels to actually propel themselves. That's just a sign, a hint. They don't know the full science, but they're able to get some hints. And Allah allowed them to have some of these baby planes in order for them to study. And so they say that these electromagnetic or hydromagnetic processes, as evidenced by radiative effects on the environment, such as burns, dehydration, stopping of automobile engines, TV and radio disruption, melting or alteration of ground and road surfaces, power disruptions, etc. So really, brothers and sisters, when we're studying the high science of our ancestors and pairing it up with what the white man is discovering today about these so-called UFOs, whom Dr. Student Minister Wesley Muhammad definitely showed us were black original people and not no grays or no greens or nothing like that. And if there are any grays, as Mother Tynetta says in one of her articles, it's because they are working for us in collaboration with us from those various planets in our solar system. But now this connects to something that Mother Tynetta, speaking of our great mother, said. When we connect the dots of the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the science of electromagnetism. Because now, as Minister Farrakhan said to us recently, that his followers are coming into their powers. As we are coming into our powers, we have to understand the various levels at which operate this technology, which is not just a technology for physical purposes, but also for spiritual purposes. Now let's read from this article. Mother Tainetta says, quote, "In continuing my answers to the many questions I have received about crystals," and there is a great series that she has on crystals, "and how they work with the human anatomy and the brain." This is important. And the brain. "I am continuing my research on how to harness," notice how these words resemble what the physicists say about electromagnetism, "harness the energy of crystals and their links to modern technology and electromagnetism. The mechanics of thought and the thinking mind uses electromagnetic energy in transferring information." See, she's talking about the radio in the mind and how that power can be developed and harnessed. So those great pyramids that harness electromagnetic energy to transmit in true north onto the heavens, transmitting into outer space. Mother Tainetta Muhammad says that we are the original space-time travelers. When we say in our supreme wisdom that thought travels at 24 billion miles per second, we need to think about how that relates to the words of Mother Tainetta Muhammad about information transmission through electromagnetism. Because if you actually understand the speed of light at 186,000 miles per second is actually the speed that regulates space-time continuum in real time, meaning that if thoughts travel at 24 billion miles per second, they travel exponentially faster, super exponentially faster than the speed of light. And if the speed of light determines space-time in real time, that means that your thoughts are able to travel space-time essentially past, present, future. All of it can be captured by your thoughts when they travel at full speed, but your brain is made to regulate the speed of your thoughts so that they can be processed in real time to interact with this three-dimensional reality. But your potential and your powers that you can actually activate, and even the CIA has been experimenting with this. The Secret Service have had programs, and the Russian military have had programs spending millions of dollars talking about how to use the mind to project it and see further out. These are all powers of the original people that we possess, but we need to come back to the knowledge of ourselves in order to reharness those powers. Mother Tainetta Muhammad continues, "Throughout all of our investigative studies of our early ancestral beginnings on this planet, it appears that our original family, identified as the God scientists, not only traveled the extent of our entire planet, but were also cosmic travelers in space-time." You see, that, brothers and sisters, that's the power that is residing in you and I, that the pyramids in ancient Egypt are only a sign of. And so as I close, I have more stuff, but I'm going to stop here because I need to let everyone digest what we have shared tonight. So we will leave the rest for part 4 next month, inshallah. But as we close, let's meditate on those words of Mother Tainetta Muhammad. Let's think about the signs that our ancestors have left for us. Let's think about how those signs as we saw with the number 72 that relates to the procession of the equinox in the actual measurements of the pyramid, actually have a sign that connects directly with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said about him in 1972. All of those things are meant to help us understand that we have a great, great, great future in front of us. And so all we need to do, dear brothers and sisters, is simple. Accept your own and be yourself. Thank you for your time and for your attention tonight, as I greet you with the greeting words of peace. And inshallah, we look forward to seeing you next month. Assalamu alaikum.
Wow, assalamu alaikum, dear brother, walaikum salam. That was beautiful. Praise be to Allah, dear family. Well, that's our dear brother Roger A. Muhammad. Once again, third month in this beautiful series that he has. And we will continue this next month, November, well, the first Tuesday of November. And we will, I think we will cap off on this series come the first Tuesday of December.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Well, we thank Brother Roger. And please, family, continue to donate to Closing the Gap Broadcast Network. This network needs your help as we have expanded so much, and there's things that cost. So whoever's on, it's several people watching. We have a lot of people watching on YouTube and several people watching on Facebook and some watching on Twitter. Please just continue to donate. But if you can do that today, go in there and maybe put a little note from the Farrakhan generation, so Brother Minister James know where this love came from and why it came. Come on, dear family, to continue to donate to Closing the Gap Broadcast Network via PayPal, jkingdom1@aol.com, or Cash App $CTG Broadcast. You can also Zelle those in to Closing the Gap Broadcast at 813-481-3921. Dear family, next week, Tuesday, special Tuesday. It so happens to be October the 10th, 10/10, which is the date I was brought into this world by my beautiful mother some years ago, October the 10th. So it marks an anniversary for me, but it also marks the day where we would have the awesome honor and blessing to have the youth committee of the Nation of Islam and the 3 representatives of the 6 that would join us next week to enlighten us on this. I mean, this committee is just so beautiful to me because I'm born in this nation. So to see something like that and to be able to engage with them on my birth anniversary, there's no better thing. And it also marks the 2-year anniversary as well of Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, the Farrakhan generation. So it's a very beautiful Tuesday. Please spread the word. And spread the word about Brother Roger coming back for the 4th time in November. Keep the word spread, because as we continue to do what we do, guess where Satan goes? Further and further into the abyss of hell. Once and for all. So, dear family, we thank you. We love you. Tune in next week. Tune in Saturday for our mother broadcast. We have different broadcasts throughout the week. We have Healing with Angelica. I Have a Testimony. We have the Rockwell Show. We have the Liberated Sisters. We have so many. New Western NOI. Please tune in. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at CTG Broadcast so that when a new video or live is on its way, you will get the notification. Go to the website, ctgbnetwork.com. And go there and support the website. Go to our Instagram pages. Go to our Twitter pages. Let's make the enemy know that we are united and we love ye one another as the man that is in front of us has loved us. We love you, family. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
There is a need in our community for a universal change. And it has to start with the man. Being a man of God means being a man possessed of the knowledge, the spirit, and the power of God, anointed to do his will. To build a people, you first must make man. Every man, no matter what his color, no matter what his race, every man, in order to be a man, must be a man of God, or he's not a man at all. Let us make man.
We don't sleep when the sun goes down. We don't waste no precious time. All my friends in the loop, making up for teenage crime. Making up for teenage crime. We don't sleep when the sun goes down. We don't waste no precious time. All my friends in the loop, making up for teenage crime. Don't go away.
This house is dedicated to knowledge and to the spreading of knowledge. Elijah Muhammad inspired new thought, new mind, new way of civilization among black people. But he wanted a house from which a light could be lifted up to give guidance to all who would be guided as this world begins to close down. This National Center for the re-education and retraining of the black man and woman, but for the totality of the human family of our planet. I named this mosque after the only woman that the Quran names a chapter after, the mother of Jesus, Maryam. All human beings need to be re-educated. That is the purpose of the National Center.